Okay, the next page after page 53, and I'm not sure if it's numbered, I don't think it is. It's called Basic Rhythmic Units, 8th note level. Now we did these same units in the quarter note level where you would have mostly quarter notes and half notes. Here we're going to have 8th notes and quarter notes. Starts out with basic 8th notes. And the idea here is it's a little bit tedious, a little boring, but you want to make sure that you can count and play these units. Now, what I call Unit 1 is 4 equal notes. Unit 2 is a long note with 2 short notes. So it's like a quarter note and 2 8th notes. And then Unit 3 is 2 8th notes and a quarter note. It's kind of the opposite of Unit 2. And then Unit 4 is 8th note, quarter note, 8th note. And that's what we had in the first rhythmic units we did as quarter note, half note, quarter note. Here it's 8th, quarter, 8th, 8th, quarter, 8th. And you got to be careful because it almost looks like a shuffle rhythm. But it's not counted in threes. It's counted in 1 and 2 and like that. So our 8th notes, we're dividing the quarter note, like if this is a quarter note, 1, 2, 3, 4, these are 8th notes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There's no set speed for 8th notes. Go at a speed that's comfortable for you. I'm going to do just a moderately slow speed and maybe a little slower than I was just counting. So I'm going to count 3 and 4 and then you can play with me, but count these rhythms out loud because that's the main thing you want to get from this is learning how to count these rhythms. And count the counts that you're not playing. You know, don't just delete them or stop counting. Count all the counts, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and in every measure. Okay. So the first one, Unit 1, 3 and 4, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Yeah, you don't have to count the and of the 4, just think of it as a quarter note to end it. Sometimes we do, sometimes we don't. There are shortcuts in counting that we'll be more concerned with that later on. And so we sometimes count things kind of wrong, you know, just to have a shortcut because the rhythms are so fast. Or we'll leave out counts. Sometimes it's not good to count every count because it'll slow you down if you're really trying to play fast. But anyway, here we're on the 2nd string, 5th fret and 3rd fret. Once you play the 3rd fret, there's no need to keep lifting it, you know, keep it down. So Unit 2, talking too much here. Okay, 3 and ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, here you have quarter note, 2 8th notes. And what you want to also do is try to, when you look at a measure like this, make sure you can see the 4 beats in the measure. Just scope them out. And also do an imaginary dividing line in the first half of the measure and the second half of the measure. So the first half of the measure is like 1 and 2 and then you have a repeat of that same exact rhythm in the second half of the measure, but it's 3 and 4 and. So you have a symmetrical repeat in the second half, and a lot of these, like the next two, are that way. Well, a lot of them are. You know, actually, they're all pretty much that way. where you can see each half of the measure. When we do the compound one later on, you'll have a different unit in the second half. Instead of quarter note 2/8, you'll have 2/8 and a quarter, but we're not there yet. So we're going to do unit 3. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4 and. Okay, now I've got to scroll down here a little bit, and we're going to do unit 4. This one's a little tricky. It's almost off beat. It's like the quarter note is tying into the second beat and then later tying into the fourth beat. It's not written as a tie. It could be, but here we don't have to write it as a tie. The quarter note is off beat. It's not on the beat. It's on the and of a beat. So it's a little bit tricky to count. So it's, sorry, okay, ready? 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4. So try to see the eighth note, quarter, eighth as one unit, and you have a repeat of that unit. And so again, divide the measure in half. I'm going to do that one again because it's a little bit tricky, maybe a little faster. Okay, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4. And you might say, why are we doing these complicated rhythms? Well, you know, you're going to see them a lot. Like there's an Aerosmith song where you're doing that, but you're doing it really fast, like 1 and 2, or 1 and 2, and 3 and 4, and, you know, da, 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 da. That's the rhythm we just did. 1 and 2, and da, 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 da. And you'll have it really fast. And so if you don't understand how to do it slow, like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and then you're not going to get it at the Aerosmith speed, the bop, 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 bop. You know, that's you know, and whether they were conscious of that rhythm that they were doing, they probably just thought it sounded cool, you know, and they did it by ear, you know. But when we study rock guitar, we have to write things down. And so it's important that you recognize these units, these rhythmic units, and learn to just know what they sound like just by glancing at them. You know the sound of da 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 da, like that. Okay, now on to the dotted, unit 1. Okay, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4. I forgot to mention that's the top of the next page, but I'm sure you figured it out. All right. The next one, dotted rhythm unit number 2, it's kind of the opposite of number 1. You have an eighth note to a dotted quarter. So it's 3 and 4 and 1, I'm sorry, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 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 3 and 4. Now the next one can, well, no, it doesn't continue. It's just one line, and it's a lot like what we had in the first ones that were half notes and quarters. but instead of a half note followed by 2 quarters, it's a quarter followed by 2 eighths. And what was 2 measures in that earlier rhythm earlier in the book is now 1 measure. So that's the way it works. You know, we're kind of doubling the rhythms, but basically they're the same rhythms. And they have the same sound, whether you're doing half notes and quarters or eighths and quarters. So keep that in mind. It's the same units, and later on you're going to have the same units in 16th notes, eighth notes and 16ths, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Okay, so this one is the compound unit 1. All right, 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 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 Have you ever had more fun in your life? Yeah, I like to say that. Okay, now the next one, 3, and now this one has a tie. So it's a little bit, you know, it almost sounds like a shuffle rhythm because you got a quarter note and then 1 eighth note, and then 2 eighth notes tied really make a quarter note, and then you have an eighth note and then a quarter. But it doesn't quite play out like a shuffle because it has kind of a tag at the end of the measure. So it's like 1, 2 and 3 and 4. 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and okay, so it's 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so that's with ties, you know, and you're going to see rhythms like that quite a lot, and you want to learn how to decipher them and understand them and make sense of them quickly. And it seems like it gets more complicated on the 16th note level, but basically it comes down to, you know, on a quarter note level, you're thinking 4 beats in a measure. On 16th note, on an eighth note level, you're thinking 4 eighth notes in the course of 2 beats. And then on a 16th note level, you're thinking of 4 sixteenths in 1 beat. So it's still thinking in 4s, and rhythms are usually either in 4s or 3s. And if you can count to 4, or if you can count to 3, sometimes you only have to count to 3, you know, instead of 4. But actually, triple rhythms in 3 can throw you off a little bit because we're so used to even numbers, and that's an odd number. So it can be, 3 can actually be more complicated than 4. And so it's sometimes a subconscious thing. You kind of want to make it 4, so you pause to make that 4th count, but you don't want to do that. You want to really read the rhythms the way they are. And it's good to drill rhythms and understand them so that it sharpens up your reading ability. Because with reading, you're not just counting rhythms, but you're counting rhythms and playing all kinds of notes. You know, like in the next. Now that has quarters and eighths and ties, and it seems really offbeat, but it kind of has a catchy rhythmic quality to it, to where if you're catching on to that, you can just kind of hear it and almost do it by ear. But it's 1 and 2 and 3, 4 and 1 and 2 and 3, 4, and that's the one coming up, melodic riff, with quarter notes and eighth notes and ties, and that one ties from one measure into the next. And but it's not too bad if you just sit down, tap it out, count it, hit one string, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, and you know, just try to read it very simply with one note and then work it out. Okay? All right.